Hello, welcome back, witches and warlocks. Welcome to the Feast of Feast. Happy Thanksgiving, everyone. We are back to do the second half of our recap of season one. Just like last week, I am joined by the beautiful and talented Candace McAfee. Hey, say hi.
Hey, happy Thanksgiving.
She's dressed like Roz and she looks super cute. Let's look at her again. So cute. So, I think this is the better half of the season, is the first thing I'm going to say, for sure. I was, like, rehashing everything that happened to write notes today, and I was like, yeah, this is, like, really when the season kicks in, and I'm definitely excited to talk about it. I know that Tom has some theories about certain young gentlemen who you were just talking about before we went live, so I'm sure he'll get into that. But I guess let's just start out with episode 6, Blurb. Episode 6, or Chapter 6, was called An Exorcism in Greendale. Wardwell tells Sabrina that she was her father's secretary, which is a lie, and that he basically tasked her with protecting Sabrina when he was the high priest of the Church of Night. Susie, Roz, and Harvey are all experiencing frightening apparitions of Susie's Uncle Jesse, and they tell Sabrina that this is happening, so she astral projects into Uncle Jesse's room and realizes that he's possessed. He does this really whole funny Mayor Sakai bit that I love that I definitely want to talk about. But later she discovers that he's not named Mayor Sakai, it is Apophis, and he's a parasitic worm demon. Sabrina enlists the help of Wardwell and both of her aunts to perform an exorcism that is designed for witches instead of like Catholic priests. And they expel Apophis from Uncle Jesse. The next day, Uncle Jesse apparently dies after suffering a heart attack, but we then see that Wardwell was responsible. And that's that episode. So what do you think about this one?
So, Wardwell just like, she just gives me all the life in every episode, man. Like, she's diabolical. Like, I love that now there's like a very careful manipulation of Sabrina's feelings, which I think, like, I don't know if this is designed for this reason, but like Sabrina is so on top of everything all the time, and she's always like really pesky, and she's always like sticking her nose into people's business and stuff. And I feel like Wardwell is like absolutely exploiting that about her. Like, she's in every scene. Every time Sabrina is up to some kind of hijinks in this episode, Wardwell's like right there to egg her on, to cheer her on, and like give her all this like positive but also negative feedback. I don't know. Like, she's shameless at this point, and I'm loving it. Like, I love it.
Yeah, it's like the weirdest relationship between them because, like, in a way, she kind of is giving her, like, useful guidance. But on the other hand, like, she's completely, her motivations are really strange, and you're never sure, like, you feel like you're being lied to by her actively because you're not really sure, like, what exactly she's doing, especially at this point. She's like the little finger of this show.
She is. That's an awesome comparison. I 110% agree and sign on with that. Absolutely the little finger. She's playing like all of the Games of Thrones. Like, she's playing like across all kingdoms, across all families, like across all plot lines. Like, this lady is like, and she's in it for the long haul. That's what I love. Like, she's telling Sabrina, oh, you know, I fell in love with your dad, and you know, this problem you're having right now with your beloved Harvey, where like you can't be with him because it's, you know, against the church. That's the same thing I went through. Like, it's all so convenient. And I feel like all the Mary Sue-ness that we know Sabrina is kind of like known for or whatever, like, I feel like all of that is kind of coming out now, kind of down to like the last frame of this show. Like, it was one of my favorite scenes, I think, out of this entire part one series, was right at the end of this episode. They're back talking again in Wardwell's home like they are in the beginning of the episode when Sabrina goes to finally confront her about her role in her life, right? So, like, in the beginning of the episode, it's all like Sabrina's like fire and fury, and she's in there and she's like, listen, like, you're not going to fucking, you know, follow me around anymore. This is weird. Like, you're a deceiver, just like my dad. Like, you lied. And then by the end of the show, you see Sabrina as like this little lamb, and she has this like very innocent face. Like, the last thing you see is like her innocent face, like looking like hopeless, like with tears in her eyes at Wardwell, and Wardwell just looks like she's going to eat her alive. Like, it's amazing. Like, the juxtaposition between the beginning and the end of this scene, really, really interesting.
Yeah, that's cool. I didn't even think about that. Scorpios, welcome to the chat. Nice to see you. Ashley is giving you some love for your background again. And
Thank you, Ashley.
Yeah, she says that Wardwell is all manipulation. She just tells her what she wants to hear in every situation. Yeah. And yeah, but she's so great. Like, you love her. Like, you do.
She's just so good. And then, like, I also found it kind of awkward how, like, at the beginning when Sabrina's like, oh, I don't know if I should trust Wardwell. Like, she's kind of weird, and I'm getting, like, creepy vibes from her. And Ambrose is like, oh, well, you have no reason not to trust her. Like, why are you being so suspicious? And I found that suspicious, to be honest. Like, I love Ambrose, and I want to believe that he has, like, every good intention in the world for his cousin. But there's also room in this show for anybody to kind of go any variety of ways. You know what I mean? Like, if I found out that Ambrose, like, did something crazy and took a giant risk, like, to try to procure, you know, safety for himself, leaving the house and, you know, kind of coming out of his house arrest, like, I wouldn't be surprised by that. You know what I mean? I feel like they've kind of left all of the characters pretty open-ended as far as, like, what their next move might be.
I have a fucking list of people that I think are suspicious.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to get into it more as we get further in, but it's like they'll have a totally, like, just neutral character who you're like, oh, that's just a nice person, and then they'll do like one thing and you're like, what is going on here?
Hold on a second. Yeah. I love it. Like, is it just or every time do they talk about Uncle Jesse, are you just like John Stamos? Because it was super distracting for me the whole episode. I'm just like, I don't understand Uncle Jesse. Like, what is their problem with him? He's handsome, he's in a band, but no. They're talking about gross demon Uncle Jesse with the boils on his face.
That dude killed it, though. Like, his acting, like, he really sold it. He was good.
He really did, man. Every time that, like, the 3 moments where he, like, appeared to them in their homes, like, that messed me up, man. Like, that messed me up. Like, I'm watching it and I'm just, like, trying to imagine, like, if I were, you know, standing, like, that's actually one of the scariest parts I think about being home alone, you know, is like when you're in your fridge, right? And, like, no one's home and, like, there's, like, you know, dim lighting or whatever. Like, I always kind of believe that, like, same thing when I'm washing my face. I always believe there's going to be someone behind me in the mirror or, like, next to me when I'm done. So, like, seeing that whole scene with Roz where she's, like, in the fridge with the milk, like, very scary.
I do think that Susie was getting the worst of it here. And I think that has a lot to do with the demon being attracted towards Uncle Jesse because it's heavily implied that he was gay or at the very least a crossdresser. Yes. So, like, she gets really hammered in with him, like, calling her an abomination and stuff. And I think that that's, like, really takes a toll on her because she deals with her own issues with, like, how her dad sees stuff like that. And that's made very clear, like, when he talks about Uncle Jesse. So I think this was really rough for her.
I really, really love Susie's storyline. I think that the opportunity to kind of tell a story that I think, like, a lot of people aren't necessarily I feel like people are more open to storylines involving trans characters now, but, like, we're still not seeing as many of those kind of stories and coming out kind of stories as we should, you know what I mean? Especially for how many young people, you know, deal with these issues, you know, on a daily basis, you know what I mean? There are outreach programs all over the place for, you know, GLBTQ youth. So I think that, that this storyline is really interesting, especially because, like, you know, by the end of this episode, you know, when they have his funeral, she's wearing a dress. Did you notice that?
Yeah.
Like, she's wearing a dress at his funeral. And I was like, this girl's willingly wearing a dress when all this time, you know, they've been kind of, like, gender fluid, you know, and not embarrassed about it. You know what I mean? It made me feel terrible recognizing that, you know, something like a person so close to her in her family, you know, she gets, like, this glimmer of hope that, oh, wait, like, he used to also cross dress. Like, he used to dress like a woman. Like, maybe there's more to his story and more to, like, our story as a family, you know, and then, like, immediately gets that squashed by this creep, you know, this creepy demon.
Yeah, and the dad was shitty about it. And, like, I think also, like, you got to remember that to everybody else, these things that the demon is saying, it's just, like, their friend's uncle, but, like, it's literally her uncle who's saying these things to her, whether or not, like, it's possessed by a demon or not.
Right.
But yeah, I loved the Mersekai bit, back to that, because we, like, see it written on the window, and she, like, goes back to Ambrose. She's like, oh, there's this demon, his name's Mersekai, and it sounds, like, so, like, mystical, and he's trying to figure it out, and he's like, yeah, this isn't Sumerian, this dude's just, like, a jokester. It's ice cream backwards.
He's still laughing at you, no big deal.
I loved it. That's like I'm gonna start making, like, character names in D&D, like, start, like, naming things backwards, you know.
I like it too because they said because Ambrose says he's a sloth demon, you know, like he's like this gross demon that's like all about like gluttony. So I feel like ice cream is it's a pretty good name. Yeah.
Let's check in with the chat here. Ambrose's beau is totally suspicious. Ashley says she is not about the boyfriend. She thinks something's up with that. I was talking to her before, and she's very convinced that like he might have killed the original boyfriend and possibly his family and his familiar. How do you feel about
that? 110% believe that. Like he's suspicious as fuck, and I hate him. Like I hate him. Luke Chalfant. Like I hate him, and I'm really excited because like Aunt Hilda on the spot, man. Like Aunt Hilda, like she loves to dabble, man. She likes to stick her fingers in every pot, and she doses him with the love potion. I'm like, man, I've seen this happen in several different mediums, whether it's books, movies, TV, and it never goes well, Aunt Hilda. Love potions never turn out well. So now I'm like, so what, is this guy gonna like come to their house and like try to murder him? Because if I can't have you, no one can. Like, what's the next step here? You know, with this love potion. I'm very excited to know more about like where this is gonna end up. But
yeah, I feel like they're setting stuff up with season 2 with that particular character.
And like I like how they're kind of plot building, like Susie, for example, right? Their storyline doesn't really kind of come to a close at the end of part 1. You know, there's still a lot more to their story. And same with Roz. Like everybody's kind of left on this little bit of a cliffhanger, and you know that there's a lot more information to come. And I feel like they tease you. They give you like just enough information. Something else I loved about this episode was Father Blackwood and Lady Blackwood. Like it's interesting seeing him as like a family man, you know? It's weird.
Family man.
Yeah, it's really weird. It's really weird. And like he hasn't stopped looking like Mikey Day from SNL for me at all. So I still just see those skeletons from David S. Pumpkins dancing every time I look at Father Blackwood.
And he hasn't cut it out with those $5 press-on clear nails from Walgreens. No,
he has not. In full effect. In full effect. Jeez.
Scorpio says, happy Thanksgiving to you all, despite the fact that I don't celebrate it in Ireland.
Oh, wow. Awesome.
Thank you, Scorpios, for that. Yeah, I'm stuffed full of food right now. I ate too much pie. Those nails are so bad. Yeah, Ashley also says that she loved when Susie met Roz's grandma and she called me handsome.
Yeah, that's a wonderful scene that like got me right in my feels.
Let's talk about the exorcism because it was really fucking cool.
It was really cool. I loved all of the witches' names that they shouted out. Like some of them are historical witches. Like some of them I recognized immediately. Like Tituba, I think, was one of the first or the first woman that was persecuted as a part of the Salem witch trials. She was a slave, I believe. And then also,
there was like a ton of them.
Yeah, what I really loved, like they also called out like different goddesses. So they call it like Circe, like the Greek goddess, and they call it Artemis. And then like I can't remember who else they called out. There was one other person that like I know they called out Morgan Le Fay, and that was amazing. They called out Anne Boleyn, and I was like, really? Because I've never thought of Anne Boleyn being like an actual witch. But when you think about like her role historically, especially like within the Tudors and stuff, and like her scheming and how she was killed and everything, like it's absolutely the same, like a similar treatment to witchcraft. Really good.
It's really interesting. I really loved this scene. I thought it was like badass and like feminist and just like tough as shit. And again, like to hear some of the people that they chose to shout out in that scene, it was just like I was full blown excited. Like this might have been like the peak of my excitement for the whole season, just seeing this whole scene go down. It was really cool. But do you think that the father was actually involved with creating this exorcism like she was told, or do you think that's bullshit?
I don't know, man. Like, I feel like that guy's just full of shit all the time. And like, it's hard for me to say like whether or not he's being honest with her here. Cause I feel like he's just like, his like modus operandi is just like dishonesty at all costs. Like there, you know, obviously in the next scene, in the next chapter, we're going to talk about like his prophecy or his revelation or whatever that he gets. And I'm just like, yeah, right, dude. Like, I just think he's so full of trash. I feel like everything that he's doing is for selfish reasons and to fulfill his own needs. You know what I mean? And like, he just makes up whatever he needs in order to get his way. Like Ashley in the chat saying her father gets credited with so much stuff. And I'm like, yeah, man, like she gets credited with he gets credited with a ton of stuff. And like a lot of it is Father Blackwood kind of imposing that on her. Oh, well, your father was such a great man.
Yeah.
He said, and like she has no choice but to believe him because she doesn't have a reference. And it kind of seems like Hilda and Zelda were a little checked out during a lot of this time. You know, it seems like they were involved, but like kind of 1 foot in, 1 foot out.
And so it's her brother, so it's like awkward with that, you know.
Yeah.
But it is like it's like a little bit of Harry Potter vibes. Like she's told why she's this important person, but she doesn't feel like that important of a person because it's like also new to her.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
All right, let's get into unless you have any final thoughts about this episode.
No, I think we covered everything.
Oh, yeah.
The only thing that I have is that like when Sabrina visits Jesse, like I like died when Ambrose rushed in with like his awesome like warlock magic and he like gave his like hardcore like wizard voice. I was like, yeah.
You like the wizard voice?
Good. Yeah, glasses got a little steamed up. I was like, ooh, you mean business, Ambrose. Mr. Spellman. Good job.
That's when he's Mr. Spellman.
That's right.
Episode 7 is the Feast of Feast,
Yes.
our titular episode today. And the Spellmans are selected for the lottery for Queen of the Feast of Feasts, a ceremony where the queen is sacrificed and eaten. Zelda volunteers, but during the selection process, Sabrina replaces Zelda and is selected to become the handmaiden to Prudence, who is chosen as queen. Sabrina spends the week trying to convince Prudence to reject her selection. She brings her to Baxter High, where Prudence claims that Harvey's family are witch hunters. Sabrina casts a protection spell on Harvey. Later at dinner, using a truth cake, Sabrina and Helga together reveal that Lady Blackwood was responsible for selecting Prudence as queen because Father Blackwood is her biological father. Sorry, I'm so full of food right now. Biological father, and she worries about the safety of her baby. At the feast, Father Blackwood announces that Prudence cannot fulfill her duties as queen, but before he can cancel the feast, Mildred, who is pumped about all this stuff, sacrifices herself and is declared the queen of the feast. The next day, Agatha and Dorcas perform a ritual to attempt to kill Harvey and his brother in the mines. Where do we start?
I don't even know, man. So this episode for me is it's difficult, really. Like, I really like some parts of it, and there are some nice Easter eggs in there. But then, like, this is kind of where, like, things really went off the rails for me with how they depict witchcraft. Like, I feel like, yes, it is a more primal faith. And I do believe that like blood sacrifice is something that is absolutely conceivably within, you know, their faith or whatever, like within their witch religion, or Satanism. But like,
just like eating each other, like raw, like a zombie movie.
Yeah, like it seems kind of like, I don't know, it's just a little too extra for me. You know what I mean? Like, even if they are like a really primal tribe of witches, like, wouldn't it really, like, I would more think that it would be like consort duties. You know what I mean? Like, even like in an Arthurian legend, like they would have, you know, like a spring festival. And like, that's actually how in like, if you read the Mist of Avalon lore, like that's how Arthur and Morgan Le Fay have a child, because like each of them is kind of like invoking, you know, the spirit of spring or whatever, and they go off on the run, and like the king does the run as the deer, and she is like her, you know, she's like the doe or whatever, and she's supposed to, you know, be fecund and, you know, welcome him into her arms and all that stuff. So like, I would think that there would be more of like less of like a cannibalism thing. Yeah. And even if so, like, part of what I hate about the set design here, right, is I feel like their church is like so like ratchet. Like their church is like you look at the Academy of Unseen Arts and it's beautiful, right? It's gorgeous. There's this big Baphomet statue or whatever, and it's gorgeous and pretty, and you know, it looks really fancy. And then you see like their church and it's like some like boarded up windows and some like cobwebs and shit. And I'm just like, really? So they're like eating on this dirty stone floor. This girl, they haven't like washed her body or cleansed her. Like I'm thinking that this religion should be very ritualistic, and there isn't even like an act to like make her holy or unholy or whatever they would call it, you know?
And how is like eating one person a feast is my next question. And I like expected them to cook her or something. Like I feel like a feast implies like some sort of like opulent meal choices or something. Like I literally like pictured them putting her on like a Spitfire and then like spinning the body like how you see like them do with like a whole pig or something. But they didn't do any of that shit. It was so strange.
We are on the same page there, my friend. I was expecting all of that. I was like, you know, maybe they would like bathe her in oils, especially because you see like all the work Sabrina has to put in to like suck ass with Prudence, right? Because like she's the shepherd or whatever of the lamb, you know? And like for me, those scenes were super priceless. Like those scenes were valuable. Like I really love spending time with Prudence like being horrible. It's wonderful. I love her.
Yeah, I wanted that buttermilk bath. That shit looked bomb. Like that was more fancy than the whole Feast of Feast.
Well, that's what I'm saying. You're gonna give your queen a buttermilk bath and like sweeten her skin. Even Ambrose, like he does the little like Silence of the Lambs, fava beans, you know, Easter egg, like a little joke or whatever. And I'm like, okay, so then we are implying here that this is like a serious ritual. Like there's a purification of her body, and you know she fasts and she's being, you know, waited on hand and foot, like fattening the calf, you know. But then this other scrawny Mildred just fucking is like, eat me dead, and everyone's like, descend upon her body. I'm like, okay, this is a little silly.
Yeah,
I don't know.
With it. Ashley said that she totally saw it coming with Blackwood being Prudence's actual bio father, and that she's talking about the orgy scene with Prudence being a bit ironic because her name is Prudence.
Agree. That is hilarious. I loved the orgy scene. Like I actually, the first part of that, the first indication that I had that I was going to be like really into it was when Prue knocks on the door and Ambrose answers. And I was like, man, this is like a really important, like this show is really trying to be woke. And like male bisexuality is like not something that like people discuss really like in popular culture. And I know like with the Mulan, the live action remake, a lot of people are upset because Shang is like this icon of like male bisexuality because he falls for Mulan kind of while she's still a dude. You know what I mean? And then it's like, presto, she's a lady. And he's like, oh, thank God, I was so confused. You know, so like, I feel like this would have been a missed opportunity, but like she walks through the door and I'm like, I'm looking at her and I'm like, I mean, obviously she's positively gorgeous. Like she's stunning, the actress, like absolutely breathtaking. So she walks through the door and he follows her with his gaze. Like he's like all in her stuff. Like, oh, who is this girl? And they flirt a little bit. So when Sabrina wakes up and she goes up to the attic or whatever to find all of them making out, I was like, yes, this is awesome. Big Scratch, you get in there. It was really good.
A lot of people complained about this because I think that they have it in their minds that all the other people who go to the school are the same age as Sabrina, who's supposed to be very young. But one, I don't think she is. I think she's older and that it's pretty well established that she's been part of the school for quite some time. So it's more like college kids doing this, which I would imagine college kids do, but we don't hear about it as much because there's still some taboo around it because of their age. And two, like orgies and stuff is like known shit associated with witchcraft. So it's not strange to me. I wasn't offended. A lot of people like threw a stink about this, but I think that that's people being a little uptight personally.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Riverdale has a similar issue because in Riverdale, like there is a hard age. Like in this show, I kind of imagine part of the reason I really love how bisexual everybody is and how kind of like queer the show is because like to me, witches, it should all be very relative, especially with how much longer they live. You know what I mean? I feel like once you get to a certain point in your life, like you kind of open that door, whether, you know what I mean? Like, and especially with like mythical creatures and stuff, like for, like if you're dabbling in like that kind of like magic, right? So like if you think about vampires, like most vampires are written in like, you know, across a lot of different great works of literature, like they're written more bisexual, like they're more fluid, you know what I mean? So I kind of think I felt that it was very appropriate for them to have this scene. And again, like, you know, going back to your point, like, you know, Beltane is absolutely a time when people like go out and, you know, make love under the full moon and all that stuff. Like that's absolutely part of what Wicca and witchcraft has been. So I didn't think that was weird. And like, quite frankly, like there's an MTV show, can't remember, I think it's called Faking It, about two girls that like are pretending to be lesbians and they're like 16 and that's how old Sabrina's supposed to be.
Yeah.
And there's a threesome on that show as well. And to me, that's creepier because it's not like religious, whereas this at least is like under their umbrella of religion, kind of. You know what I mean? You can at least chalk it up to that. Whereas that other show is just, you know, for shits and giggles.
Yeah, like on Supernatural, there's this character that you would absolutely really like. Her name's Rowena. She's hot, but she's Crowley's mom. It's a long story who Crowley is, but she like straight up talks about how she was a witch and like she doesn't know who his father was, and she's like very casual about it, like, oh, it was an orgy, like it just happens, like whatever. And like I love that about her because that's like how I would imagine it is in like ritual ceremonies like that. That's just how shit is. It's not like an uptight thing at all. It's like you're not gonna be Dothraki and be uptight about sex either, you know?
Exactly. Like it's definitely like a cultural issue. Like I feel like though I wasn't surprised that Sabrina was a square because obviously she is a square. Like I feel like maybe that's like her job. Kind of like we were talking, you know, last episode about how like, you know, Jess and New Girl, like the show is definitely about Zooey Deschanel's character, but it's more about like everyone else that's around her. And she's kind of like the weakest character on that show, arguably. You know what I mean? Yeah. Same. I feel like the same thing with this show. Like Sabrina to me is consistently like in last place. Not saying that I don't like her as a character. I'm just saying she's the least interesting out of all the other characters I think that they're serving me, you know? And it's like, I feel like they missed so many opportunities to make her more interesting. Like, I was surprised that she wasn't swayed by Prudence at least once in this episode. Like, she's this close to this girl's face, giving her a milk bath, and she looks beautiful, and her skin is all luminous, and there's candles everywhere. And she's just like, scrub, scrub. I'm like, really? Interesting choice. Okay, cool. And then she's like, come in, the water's fine. I'm wearing really sexy, expensive lingerie. And Sabrina's like,
yeah, but this girl's a virgin, and her whole like shtick on the whole show was like, I love Harvey. So like, I'm not surprised.
Yeah. I'm just like, man, shake things up. Like, you want me to believe that she's going to be a badass eventually. Like, I'm getting these like little moments with Sabrina where she's like, you know, kind of like outraged, you know, and she's like flabbergasted that something's going on and she's offended and she's going to do something about it. Like, she's very, you know, like good. But at the same time, I'm just like, you know, I want to see more of that seduction. And I feel like in this second half, like we get a little bit more of that about, you know, her kind of throwing caution to the wind and like dipping her toe in, because to me, that's what witchcraft is. Like, as much as Ambrose was upset with her for doing astral in the previous episode, he did it like it was nothing. He was like, I'll be right back. Like, they very much play fast and loose in the Spellman family in general. And it would be interesting to, I think, see Sabrina let go a little bit.
Yeah, let me say, Ashley in the chat is saying, she was just basically saying that the Mildred thing was like a way for Blackwood to save face so that it wouldn't become like controversial. Like, some people wouldn't like him changing that because we already know that it's like a thing with Sabrina's dad again, outlawed that and he brought it back. So I just wanted to make sure I brought that up as well. And yeah, she agrees that Sabrina is like too smitten with Harvey to stray. But like, girl, you had to be a virgin before you signed the book and shit. Like, live a little now. Like, you sold your soul to Satan. Live a little.
Like, you're already a witch. Like, go ahead and reap all the benefits of that. Everybody else is having a blast, you know?
That's what Nick said. Nick was all like, 2 schools, 2 boyfriends.
So like, this also was an episode where, and again, like, maybe I'm just in my feelings about it, about Sabrina, but like, this was another example of like how, to me, she is like, again, I don't like the Mary Sue term because I think it's really kind of sexist, you know, sexist, but like, I feel like they are trying to make her like this relatively perfect character. And I'm like, you know, that's not how characters advance. Like, they have to have problems. They have to have drama. They have to make mistakes in order for them to be interesting. And like, I feel like with Roz, when Roz wants her book, you know, to be unbanned, and she wants to be able to read that, and she wants to be able to study and all that stuff, like, rather than helping Roz find a solution to her problem and like opening up the door to her agency, she instead just like does it. Like, she fixes the problem for her, right? And it's not like it's with witchcraft, which I would understand. Okay, well, Sabrina is a witch. She doesn't have the powers that Roz has. You know, that's why she's able to help. That I think is okay. But like, it's she's helping her just in like the regular human world. And then we also have like this scene too, something that really impressed upon me, like the relationship and the dynamic between Prudence and Sabrina. So like, Sabrina's trying to like mansplain, for lack of a better word, but like without being a man. Like, she's trying to like explain to Prudence, you know, like why you know, Father Blackwood is wrong and why he's bad for her, but like she's not giving terms like, hey, like this is bad for you. Like she's not saying like what the effect is for her. She's saying, oh, overarchingly this is bad and this is how I understand it and you should think that way too. And something that Prudence says, like she looks at her and she goes, why is your faith more valid than mine? Like what is the difference between your faith and like your human boyfriend and like you giving it all up for this guy?
Oh, I
and
loved her.
It all up for Father Blackwood. She's like, I understand you don't agree with me. I don't agree with you. Your dude comes from a line of witch hunters. I would never touch him with a 10-foot pole. Like, if I can be cool with you, like, why can't you leave me alone? You know what I mean? Like, why can't you leave me alone with like your feelings or whatever? And like, that was something that like, that was an intense moment for me because like, I do agree that like Sabrina is very gung-ho on solving other people's problems, whether they want her to or not.
Oh yeah, like sometimes it's the right thing to do, like her putting this protection spell on Harvey in this particular moment. Like that was a good call, and it was subtle. It wasn't like, okay, well everything's fixed now, next plot line, you know. I loved Prudence in that moment. Like we talked about this. She's one of my favorite characters on the show. I do think she's really beautiful and she's really interesting. And the actress who plays her is just like really, she's got this like charismatic sexual vibe to her that really works for the character.
Yeah.
And man, like that's probably, I think, one of the highlights of her character because it really shows you where she's coming from and you side with her. Even if you think she's been an asshole this whole time, which I don't necessarily think she has been an asshole the whole time. In this moment, it's really hard not to agree with her when she explains it that way.
Yeah, agreed. So there's an Easter egg in this episode. There's a Riverdale crossover, believe it or not, and it hasn't been revealed. Like I did some research after because I rewatched it. It was on a second viewing that I was like, wait a minute, is that Ben Button? So in Riverdale, there's a character named Benjamin Button, who like Benjamin Button. So there's a character named Ben Button, and if anybody is watching Riverdale this season, it's unknown as to whether or not he's dead. He jumps out of a window, but we don't see his body. There's like a whole storyline this season that deals with the supernatural, which is why I'm not sure if like the end of this Sabrina season will have like an actual crossover event between the two of these shows, despite the fact that they're on different networks. But what's interesting is that, so Ben Button is carrying, he's the pizza delivery boy, right? Who comes to Wardwell's house. He's from Persephone's Pizza, which is hilarious and cute. Because obviously she's evil and Persephone is the goddess of the underworld, right? She's the Hades. So he knocks at the door and Wardwell answers, and like she had previously told the principal that she was unavailable for plans that night because she was going to sit at home and have a nice dinner and have a nice meal. So she like welcomes this handsome young man into her home and like closes the door behind him. And you're just like, okay, so now what? Like, is she going to make sweet love to him? Is she going to eat his face? Is she going to feed him to a crow? Like, what is she going to do with this boy? But it's funny that he's so interested because on Riverdale, there's an episode where Ms. Grundy, one of the teachers, moves to Greendale, right? She leaves Riverdale and she moves to Greendale because Greendale is in Riverdale. Like you hear about it and you see people like go there or whatever. So she moves, and then there's a scene where you see her teaching a student the piano, right? And she's obviously like about to make out with him, like it's getting like hot and heavy. And that student is Ben Button. So like Ben Button is apparently up in Greendale all the time, hanging out with Grundy, delivering pizzas to strange women in houses. So like I don't know what this timeline is supposed to look like because he's credited as the same character in both shows. So part of me wonders, like, is he dead in Riverdale and that's why he's delivering from Persephone's Pizza because he's dead, underworld? Or if like Sabrina and Riverdale are just not on the same path, and maybe like his character on Riverdale isn't dead and Sabrina is now and Riverdale is in the past. Like I'm not really sure where these things are gonna kind of net out, but shout out to all my Riverdale fans.
Yeah, I didn't catch that at all because I don't watch that show. That's really interesting. And that does have some cute little, like, you know, wordplay and playing off the characters and shit. That's cool. I dig that.
Yeah.
Ashley is talking about Nick in the chat. She said that Nick is different, but we don't see other boys at the school to compare him to.
True.
Tom thinks that Nick Scratch is the Antichrist. And we think that the biggest hint is that his name is Nick Scratch, like homage to Old Scratch.
Yeah. I could see that, actually. I could see that. Like, part of me, I have a theory, that Father Blackwood is like the ultimate evil, and that like everything that he says and everything that he does, again, is for selfish reasons, and that he doesn't actually have a line with the Dark Lord. Like, I kind of think that maybe Father Blackwood and like the Dark Lord that we see in the show that talks to Wardwell and stuff, part of me wonders if that's a different being than the one that like Ed Spellman, Sabrina's father, reported to. Like, I kind of wonder if there's like a divide there. And like, I do wonder if like, because you know how strongly Nick Scratch is like going after Sabrina, like he's relentless and he's not coming on too strong. Like, he's leaving the door just open enough for her to trust him. He's like, you know, telling her everything she wants to hear. He helps her, you know, make her way through the witch world. Like, he's very sweet and convenient. And to me, like, that's absolutely the sign of the devil. Like, the devil is beautiful and he's handsome and he's sexy and, you know, he wants to convince you to join his side. You know, like, the devil isn't like some crone or some like old, you know, disgusting creature or whatever like that. You'd never be attracted to that. Like, the devil has to, you know, cause temptation. So like, I look at, you know, like her, especially his juxtaposition with her in the relationship with Harvey. Like, she loves Harvey and he acknowledges that she loves Harvey. He knows she loves Harvey. He's not even trying to argue that. He's just like, well, I'm here too. Like, that's all he's saying is, I'm here too, girl. And she's like, you are here too. And I'm like, no, don't do it.
And he's always like right there.
Yep, always.
He's always there. Like, literally and we'll get into it more because there was like a particular moment where Tom was like, this fucking guy's the Antichrist.
Yep.
But that's like a huge part of Tom's argument about it is like, this dude's always involved.
He's always involved. And he's always positive. He's never the naysayer. He's never, well, I have a problem with this. He's never, well, guys, actually, he's always like, let's go time. I actually know something about this. He's studying necromancy in school.
Yeah.
What kind of person is studying necromancy in school? Even Sir Snape doesn't study necromancy. Okay?
Ambrose does. Ambrose.
That's different. He's just trying to learn, okay? He's not... Ambrose wasn't like, yeah, let's raise people from the dead. Nick Scratch was like, let's do it. We should do it right now.
Speaking of, episode 8 is called The Burial. Harvey survives the mine collapse thanks to Sabrina's protection spell, but unfortunately his brother is killed along with 4 other people in the working at the mines. Later, at Tommy's funeral, Harvey and his father have an argument which gets physical. Kind of Sabrina's fault, by the way, but we'll get into that. And Tommy's casket falls over. Roz picks up Tommy's helmet and has a vision of Dorcas and Agatha in the mines crushing puppets of Harvey and Tommy with rocks. Roz tells Sabrina about the vision and confides in her that she has an ability called the Cunning that she inherited from her Nana Ruth after her family was cursed for crossing a witch generations ago. Sabrina tells Prudence, and they, along with Nick and Dorcas, assist in resurrecting Tommy and replacing his soul with Agatha's. However, they quickly use the cane pit at the cemetery to bring her back to life. Meanwhile, Father Blackwood, Candace's favorite character, consults with Ambrose about his house arrest and informs him that basically his immunity deal still stands if he wants to go ahead and be an informant on who his co-conspirators were. Ambrose turns him down. And while Harvey and his father are having dinner, Tommy returns to their house, alive, but in weird condition.
Man, a lot went on in this episode.
It did.
First thing that I'd like to discuss is that Aunt Zelda does the weird stuff. That's the first thing I want to discuss. Zelda and Father Blackwood hanging out, if you will. I can't say that I didn't see it coming, because like I think I did. Like, she's obviously like super hot for him, and like, I mean, whenever you see movies that are about like the church or whatever, like the Christian church, there's always a lady that's like super into the reverend or whatever. So like, I guess it fits that like Aunt Zelda is that person, you know?
He's horny for God.
You know, so horny for God. And like, I don't know, man. Like, he's all like, at one point, I can't remember the exact quote, but he's basically like, he yells at her, like when she like gets in his face to kiss him and he's like, ugh, and he like recoils from her. I'm like, yo, what are you doing, man? You just insulted this lady. And then she like still goes for it. I'm just like, Zelda, this is going to be your undoing. Like, this is it, you know, this is it for you.
But he's like, grab the cat of 9 tails.
Oh my god.
We're both terrible people and we need to be punished, but also let's come.
Dude! Like, my blue balls are not the Dark Lord's will. I must be satisfied. I'm like, ew. Like, can you imagine if a dude were like, yo, Jesus said that I'm allowed to come. You should just let me do it. Like, I'd be like, all right. You have a good night. Don't call me. That's what I would say. I wouldn't just be like, cool. So
his wife is fucking beautiful. Like, to me, his wife is far more attractive than Zelda.
She is, but she's crazy and she tried to kill Prudence. So, I don't know.
I would too if my fucking dude was acting like this guy.
By the way, last episode I said that the reason I was going to tell you why I think Prudence is your favorite character.
Yes.
So I should have told you this in the last episode when we were talking about that. But when Prudence is about to go to Baxter High with Sabrina, she's like, "Oh, I don't know. You should come with me to school. It's going to be so much fun." And Prudence is like, "Ugh, what do I have? Like, what can I possibly do at fucking Baxter High for the day? Like, yeah, you think I'm going to like learn something from your shitty culture? Like, get out of here." And she's like, "I don't know. There are human boys to torment." And she like gives like 8 other reasons after that. And Prudence is like, "Shh, it's fine. You had me at torturing people. I'm going to go." I was like, that sounds like a Kimber thing to say. That's very Slytherin. I would love to, I can be mean to boys. I'll be there. I'll show up.
I love her. She's awesome. Ashley's blowing up the chat. Let's see. She says she feels like the Dark Lord is not speaking to Blackwell and that he's totally self-serving. So she agrees with you there. She feels like the Cunning is the copyright infringement-free version of The Shining. Fully agree. Totally the knockoff Shining. I also saw that coming. Zelda was way too into him. I honestly thought it was happening concurrently. I didn't know that it was new. So to her, she was mostly surprised that this wasn't already happening between her and Blackwood. She thought it was already like a thing, but she's like, oh, this is like a new relationship? Surprise.
Totally agree. Like, I think that, the Cunning, like, I kind of wonder if this is them trying to say that Roz is a fate. Because the fates, like in Greek culture, they're or in Greek mythology, they are obviously 3 sisters that are blind, but they can see the future. So like Roz is going blind. She can still see the future. She still has like this kind of hunch, like this sixth sense kind of thing, which I think is really interesting. And if any of our Lost fans, Raul, Cal, if any of you guys are out there watching, Rose plays Roz's grandma, Rose from Lost. I know you don't know anything about that. I'm just saying.
No, but I like the fates thing, and I feel like Tom is going to be very on board with that because he's heavy into like mythology and lore and stuff, and he didn't say anything about that to me, so I don't think that's really on his radar of what he was thinking, but that's really interesting and cool. I dig that.
So, like, I also really thought that, like, this episode, like, I like that it kind of leaves the door open to Roz kind of crossing over into the world of darkness because she seems pretty, like, close, like, alongside it. I like that, like, Susie is figuring out kind of who they are a little bit more. After episode 7, you see her wearing dresses for the rest of the episode. And then, you know, when we move into episode 8, you see Susie in boys' clothes again after she discovers Dorothea, this character, this woman that she's distantly related to, that also wore men's clothes during like pioneer times and helped rescue a ton of witches. So like I think that like her inspiration with from Dorothea, as well as what she now knows about her uncle, like I really like that they're kind of taking the character there. Again, like I'm just hungry to know more. Like to me, I think that the human characters sometimes get a little weak on this show because like you're up against like all these really powerful witches and warlocks and stuff doing really cool magic. But in this episode, like I kind of found it a little bit telling. Like even though Harvey's kind of a bummer in this episode, he still kind of rises to the occasion. Like he tries to, be hard and firm for his family and everything. He tries to stand up to his dad. Like it's an interesting episode for the human characters, I think.
Yeah, and 2 things about the funeral is that was totally Sabrina's fault. She cast that like give him strength little spell, and he like definitely tried to fight his dad at his brother's like funeral. It wasn't an open or closed casket. It was literally an empty casket, which is like gotta be the worst feeling ever. And he felt like it was really rushed too because they hadn't found his brother yet. But so that was like Sabrina's fault. And also The second I'm watching this episode with Tom a few days ago because we were trying to catch him up before we did this, and the second that Roz is singing at the funeral, he's like, "That's just Candace. That's just Candace."
So cute. I love
he was like that. He's like, "Yeah, whatever. Then this is just Candace, baby Candace."
Oh, you know what else I liked? I like the dynamic between Wardwell and Father Blackwood in this episode. Like, she takes her out. She takes Sabrina and the girls, the Weird Sisters, out to that tree to see the tree witch, Dorothea, or whoever. Not Dorothea. I can't remember her name. You know what I'm talking about, the tree witch in the forest?
Yes.
They're talking about, like, what...
For the hunting scene.
Yeah, like, what her relationship was to her, like, Father Blackwood equivalent, and, like, why that person was, like, untrustworthy.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, I like how, you know, Wardwell seems to be kind of undercutting Father Blackwood a little bit. I'm just wondering, like, to what end? Because I feel like they're playing for the same team. But, like, that's another reason why, you know, to Ashley's point, like, I feel like kind of there's something else going on with Blackwood. Like, I feel like he's not being honest. I feel like he's not being transparent. I feel like everything he's doing is 100% self-serving. And I feel like Wardwell's probably going to catch him in that because I don't know that they're speaking to the same deity. You know what I mean? Yeah. I don't think they are.
Yeah, for sure. Fuck, there was something I wanted to say about this episode and I totally lost it. I read the chat and then flew out of my head.
Was it about how dark she goes? How dark Sabrina goes?
No. It'll come back if it's important. Let me read my blurb. Anything else you wanted to say about this episode?
I think that those of us who are waiting for Sabrina to, like, step up to the plate and actually, like, show that she's a witch and, like, show that struggle between her human side and her witch side, I feel like this is the first time we really see that. Obviously, she buries Agatha, right? I believe she slits her throat to try and bring back Harvey's brother, right? So she doesn't hesitate. Like, this girl doesn't hesitate. Like, they put on a good show. Obviously, everyone's kind of in on it or whatever because they think they can bring her back, like, at, you know, this with the Cane Pit, you know, at the Spellman's house, and, like, that's really interesting in and of itself that they have this, like, amazing, like, pit of, you know, regeneration and rejuvenation, like, in their front yard. Like, that's awesome.
Which they set up earlier in the season. Yeah,
agree. But, like, so. And I see Ashley saying she made an out for herself with the Spellman soil, right? And, like, that was something that I did take into consideration, that, like, she knows that she can, you know, bring Agatha back. But at the same time, like, she still has to slit the girl's throat. Like, she has to cut her throat and watch her bleed to death on the ground. Like, she had to actually take the life. So, like, even though she knows she can bring her back, like, it's still a lot to murder somebody. You know what I mean? It's a lot to, like, grab somebody by the throat, slit their throat, and then, like, watch them bleed out. Like, that's some crazy shit. And I feel like whenever Sabrina gets, like, a little taste of what it is to be truly dark or to go dark a little bit, like when she was scaring the boys, like, in the first part of the season, in the cave, you know what I mean? When she, like, got them in the cave or whatever, like, she does have limits. But I feel like as we watch this show, at least I'm hoping, like, maybe this is just me spitballing here, but, like, it would be awesome to see her have to struggle more and more and more to, like, not be seduced by the darkness, you know? Because the first time, like, when she was with Prue and the girls in the cave, she immediately was like, oh, this is fucked up. But, like, when you watch her while she's doing this ritual, you know, and as she's, like, killing Agnes and when she slits her throat, like, she doesn't flinch. She doesn't blink. Like, she's not concerned. She doesn't look worried. Like, she just goes for it and kills this girl, like, straight up murders her.
Yeah.
Like,
and
that was interesting to me.
Like, so much of it is because of Harvey, too, is what she doesn't realize. There's this, like, toxic thing about their relationship that he doesn't even realize because she does some terrible things. And really at the root of them is that she will do all these terrible things if it's for Harvey.
Yeah. I really wonder how that's going to come back up again, though, because if you think about it, right? So obviously we still don't know how Sabrina's parents actually died. The rumor is that it was a plane crash, which sounds like, you know, a bunch of huck, you know, it sounds like some nonsense. But I think that, like, there might be something there, like, to your point, man, there might be something there, like, with the relationship between Sabrina's dad and her mom, between, like, Edward and Diana, and how, and like, what maybe he did. Like, he actually did too. Like, he signed, like, he, you know, made decisions for Sabrina and for his family without thinking about the future. Like, he too was rash in the name of love, you know? So, like, I'm interested to see, like, where this is going to lead her, because, I mean, obviously she has options in Nick Scratch, but, like, she's super hung up on Harvey.
Yeah. He's not cute in real life. I saw him with his blonde hair, and he looks like Aaron Carter, but now.
Yeah, agreed.
Any final thoughts on this episode before we move on to Chapter 9?
No, I think we can go.
Cool. Chapter 9 is called The Returned Man, and this is where shit starts getting really good. I was into it. Father Blackwood allows Ambrose to attend the academy despite his sentence, and he obtains his own familiar, a mouse called Leviathan. Cute. Into it. Agatha becomes sick and begins coughing up dirt. Hilda advises Ambrose that Agatha was never meant to be brought back to life, and I loved her really, like, cavalier fucking, oh yeah, just give her some fizzy water and she'll be good. You're gonna give it to her with love, right? Like, come on, girl. And they were like,
I don't know.
Roz has a vision of dogs tearing Tommy apart. Sabrina discovers that Tommy's soul is in human, like mortal human limbo, which is apparently different than witch limbo. Harvey worries for his brother, that he's just not in shock, but that he's different than he was before the mind collapse, which, like, yeah, duh. Sabrina travels to mortal limbo with the help of Wardwell, where she briefly encounters her mother's soul before finding Tommy, which I definitely want to talk about it because it's interesting that her mom is there.
Yeah.
However, she's unsuccessful at bringing him back, and he is eaten by a soul eater, ruining any chance of saving him. And she still was gonna try.
Dude.
Like, come on, man.
Poor choices.
Yeah. Meanwhile, Susie has been communicating in secret with the spirit of her ancestor, Dorothea, who asks if the Spellmans are still witches. Later, Sabrina finally tells Harvey that she is a witch and that she needs to kill Tommy because his soul is now gone. But Harvey chooses to do it and breaks up with Sabrina. Take it away.
So I see Ashley in the chat saying she likes this Harvey better than the one in the earlier series. Completely agree with you. Finally, we see Harvey get a little bit of backbone. We see him kind of come out of the fog that is his relationship and his love and romance with Sabrina. And he gets to this place where he's just like, you know, he has this clarity about his role in his family and, you know, like what life means. And like, you know, Tommy is back and like, I got to be there for my brother and, you know, all this stuff. Like, I really think that his character kind of starts thinking more logically rather than being kind of like caught up in being like a young boy. And I think it's the shock of losing his brother. Like, you know, he says in the previous episode that, you know, his brother is the one who kept him safe from his dad. Like, you know, when he was cleaning out his closet, he found like, you know, an acceptance letter to like, you know, a bunch of really great colleges. And like, he had scholarships that he could have used, but like he stayed in town because he knew that his dad would hurt Harvey, you know? So I think that, like, I really like the relationship between the two brothers, and it sucks that his brother's dead because I thought he was a pretty quality character, especially because his dad is like such a dick.
I know. Dad is going full walk hard, like, wrong kid died. Like, it's like, come on, man.
Fucking horrible. I felt so bad for him. I was surprised though that like they decided to make the necromancy work on this show. Like, I mean, you can tell me whether or not this is the case on Supernatural, but like Buffy the Vampire Slayer definitely has an episode like this. And I can't remember. There's at least one or two other shows that I remember that have episodes that revolve around like necromancy and bringing someone back from the dead, and like it almost works. You know what I mean? But it never quite actually works. Like in Buffy, the way they use it is we see like kind of parallels of like Buffy yelling at the people who like try to bring her mom back or whatever. And this is dangerous and it's stupid. And like, it's not going to be her when she comes back. Like, don't be an asshole. And then like, you see like Joyce kind of walking home. So like it happens. Right. And like, they do bring this character back from the dead, but you never actually see them. Like, they end the spell right before they open the door. So like, there's never like the big reveal. So actually seeing the reveal in this show was awesome. Like, I was very surprised and very excited that they like decided to go like all the way with this storyline, because again, like, I don't know. I mean, does Supernatural have a storyline like this where someone actually gets brought back, or does it like almost happen there too?
Supernatural is complicated because people get brought back all the time because they literally are able to like talk to Reapers and stuff. So it's like really complicated. Usually it's only Sam and Dean who have been brought back back to life like countless times, but they've also had episodes where like Dean had to take over the role of like basically death himself, like the Grim Reaper, and he learned that like he didn't want to take this young girl's who was dying of cancer's life or whatever, and because he didn't take her life, like other people started dying around her and it started like rippling out. So they kind of have like both sides of that, but Supernatural's such a complicated show with the rules there. Ashley asked, do you think that Mrs. Wardwell knew that trying to go get his soul back would fail?
You know, honestly, like I don't think that she did, because I think she seems like, to me, she seems a little surprised when it happens. And I think that there's some urgency that she also kind of like feels as well. Like I can't even tell you the sense of dread that I felt the first time, like you hear that beast, you know, like she's in this like other place, this like upside down, if you will, you know, in this like this limbo, and it's foggy and it's dark and she can't really see, and she's like trying to find her way, you know, through this like din, and she's, you know, it's mostly like her listening rather than looking and using her eyes, because like she couldn't really see like, you know, 2 feet in front of her face. And then obviously, like you said, like she sees her mom, and like that's totally weird and bizarre. And like I definitely want to know more about that. But like as soon as you hear that beast, like you hear like the growl, like that guttural, like throaty growl, I was like, man, this girl is gonna get eaten. She's gonna get eaten, and the show's gonna be over. Oh God, she has no thread. Her thread is broken. You know, like.
Oh, you mean that red string didn't work out?
Oh my God.
That always works, just a string. Like nothing can go wrong with that.
Listen, it was doomed from the start, just doomed. And like, I don't know, man, like that show, there are parts of that show that get really scary. And I think that that's something that like, there are a lot of shows that are, you know, that are like horror shows. Like even Buffy really wasn't scary, but this show gets like straight up scary.
Yeah, it's really hard for me because I'm super desensitized when it comes to horror. But I do think that this show was more on the horror side than I was expecting. 100%. Yeah. And this part was really cool. And like, obviously the mother being in limbo is like a huge cue that she's not, you know, that she had an untimely death, because that's the type of thing that's going to land you in limbo. But again, they didn't really give us enough information. They always show us like this much of the parents.
Right.
So just like a little taste.
Yeah.
What else was cool in this episode? They went into the Dorothea stuff a little bit more, and let's talk about Harvey's scene when he is told that she's a witch.
Yeah, man, I wasn't surprised that he still kind of remembered, because she has that premonition of telling him again. Like I can't remember what episode it is, but she dreams about telling him, and he's like, wait, like I think it's the Batty Bat episode 5. Where she's like, oh, I think I told you once before. And he was like, yeah, I kind of remember it. So it's almost like a mirror image of that dream that she had. So I feel like it's really important to realize that this is like her worst nightmare, like his reaction. In the chat, you know, Ashley said, you know, Harvey really had to grow up all at once. Like he grew up so fast in this episode, you know, and he's put into this like impossible situation where his brother comes back and he's a little suspicious because he's not talking and he's weird, and like he doesn't entirely trust like what's going on, but at the same time, he's so happy to see him, he kind of has to just go along with it. And then Sabrina like shows up and just shatters that. And like, you know, we already know how much she cares for him. Like we already know how important that he is, so much so that she like makes horrible decisions because of it. So it's interesting to see him like stand his ground and put his foot down and be strong in the face of all of this and be like, listen, I can't do this with you. I'm sorry. Like that was intense.
It's pretty fair, and like, man, like what this kid has went through like a crazy amount of shit, and like we know that he loves her, so it's got to be really difficult for him, you know, to even do that. Like, okay, now my brother's gone, I'm stuck here with my shitty dad, and I just lost like the only girl I care about. Like even at the funeral, he was like, oh, I would talk to my brother about girls. Well, girl, you know, like this is the only girl he's probably ever really like loved so far in his whole life, and he just can't look at her right now. Like he's so like, I think that he's hurt, and not really necessarily blaming her for the shit with the brother, but definitely like associating her with what happened to his brother, and also just feeling like really lied to by someone that he trusted a lot. And it was heartbreaking to watch this scene because he did a really good job. Like, I really believed him that he could kind of like feel like he's had this conversation before, and that again, it's like stacking on top of the heartbreak he felt the first time. Now he's feeling it all over again, and it's worse than it was the first time. You know, he's already so broken by everything that's happened to him recently that this is just like the last straw where he's like, you know what, like, I just can't right now. I can't. I'm gonna go kill my brother though. Thanks for that. But I can't look at you right now. Please go home. You know?
Yeah. And like I love that this is now a 1-2 punch for Sabrina. As far as like lessons in consequence. Like, this is an episode where she just fails, man. Like, she fails all over the place in these episodes. Like, she just doesn't, like, finally her luck runs out. You know what I mean? And like, I would argue that I think that Sabrina would be a little bit more of a compelling character to me if these losses happened a little earlier in the season. I feel like they kind of allowed her storyline to kind of get out of hand to where like she's saving people in every episode and she like knows all the answers and she's doing everything right and she's perfect all the time. Like, to me, that was just too heavy. But like, now it's like, okay, so now this girl's gonna like lose everything because, you know, as much as he loses, like, she loses too. Like, she loses because, you know, not only did she like make all of these decisions, right, at great risk and at great personal cost to her, to her family. Like, she put everything on the line to try and bring Tommy back and to try and make Harvey happy. You know what I mean? And to like hopefully like support her friends. And she's made this big decision like not to leave to the Academy of Unseen Arts full time because she wants to be with him, right? She's like making all of these choices in his name, but like she never consults him. She never asks him, is this what you want? She never asks him if are we on the same page? Like, she doesn't allow him to make educated decisions about himself, and like neither does his father. Like, he's never allowed to make decisions. He's never allowed to make choices. And I think the one last place that he thought he had some semblance of choice was with Sabrina. And then like in one fucking fell swoop, all of that just falls down and like they both lose. You know, they both lose. Like, Sabrina, she looks beyond shocked that it's done. Like, it doesn't even look like it's registering to her. You know what I mean? She's just like, what are you talking about? We're going to be fine. Like, we're good. Like, you know, I can fix this. And he's like, no, dude, I can't fix this with you. Like, I can't even look at you. Like, you're all I've ever thought about and you're all I've ever wanted. And like, this is the ultimate betrayal, you know? So like, it's rough. It's really rough.
On the one hand, I kind of like that she wins and wins and wins and wins until she loses, because she's like a gambler, dude. Like,
True.
she's just stacking, like, oh, I'm invincible, I can do anything, and then it all just like collapses around her. So when she does fail, like, it hits her harder than like most of us when we fail, because we've all dealt with failures, you know?
Yeah.
But the Harvey, like, it's so rough, like, for this poor kid, man. Like, it's like, I think he totally fully was justified in everything that he said there. But yeah, the thing you said about his choices, like, she just says like, oh, well, he would do it for me. Like, that's what she says every time. And it's really unfair because we don't know if he would. He's never been put in a situation like that. They've never had any discussions about shit like this, you know? So yeah, the him not ever having a choice until this, you know, terrible choice is really interesting as well.
So something else that I noticed about this episode, right, with so obviously Roz and Susie kind of have some time together. They go visit Nana Rose again, right? And like, I love how Nana Rose is like, listen, young man, to Susie. It's super precious and adorable. And I love that, like, even though Nana Rose can't see, she sees Susie as they are. You know what I mean? She sees Susie like from top to bottom, you know, head to toe, even though she has no vision. And like, that's something that I think is like a really nice way to talk to, I mean, obviously this show is like not specifically targeted at children, but like to talk to younger people about tolerance and acceptance. You know what I mean? Like, Nana Rose doesn't know anything about Susie other than the fact that Susie feels like a good person. She knows that Susie cares for her granddaughter, and she sees the two of them as the best of friends. You know what I mean? Like, she doesn't see Susie as anything less than what they are. And I think that's really awesome. And I also really like, so there's like a little thing that happens, because obviously I'm a book nerd. There's a little thing that happens in the Cerberus bookshop where Susie is then accosted by those two boys again. And we find out that Aunt Hilda is able to like read them and give them a piece of her mind in like the most passive and polite way as an English.
That kid up. She fucked that kid up.
Hard. I was like, ooh, Aunt Hilda. Whew. She was not fucking around.
But it was also nice for them to address like why sometimes bullies do the things that they do, you know?
Agree. And like the book that she picks out. So the book that Susie is trying to steal is Orlando by Virginia Woolf, right? And like the significance of that book with Susie's character. Like I thought it was, again, like I really feel like they're paying, you know, close attention in this show, and they are trying to kind of like I don't know, stay woke, for lack of a better term. Obviously, we already discussed The Bluest Eye in the previous episode. Orlando, by, you know, prolific feminist writer Virginia Woolf, is based on, it's like a biography, kind of, that's based on, it's like a fictional character that's based on a real person, Vita Sackville West, who was an androgynous queer woman. And the book is all about a man who cross-dresses, but also then starts living his life as a woman. There's actually a movie version of this with Tilda Swinton as the title character, Orlando, and I think in that she appears both as male and female, but I think in that one they kind of turn it on its ear, where I think she begins as a woman, and then toward the end she starts becoming more male and more masculine. But I thought it was interesting that they would put that in there, because Susie is obviously really looking for a way to understand who they are as a person, and like what this means for them, and what kind of responsibility or duty they have to themselves to live honestly. You know what I mean? Like I like all of these little bits and pieces that they're putting in here, because I feel like if there's a kid out there who thinks that maybe they're trans, especially if they come from a community or a family that is intolerant, like I feel like that's like the tiniest glimmer of hope. It's almost like leaving a trail of breadcrumbs, you know? Like, yeah. I thought it was really cool.
Absolutely, I agree with you. And it's nice that they're, you know, it's really subtle on the show, that it goes by quick, like whatever book they choose to mention, but it has all this like background information. If you're familiar with those books, like they're trying to tell you something about that character by the choices of book they have. And that's really awesome. And they should do that more.
Yeah. You know? That kind of brings me to like the idea of like how thoughtful they're being with some of the pieces, and then how not thoughtful they were being in the whole like thing with the lawsuits. Did you hear that they finally reached a settlement with the Temple of?
I did not. What happened?
Yeah, so there's an NDA, so they can't specifically talk about like what the I guess the outcome was, but they are crediting in all future episodes that will air. So in the upcoming Christmas special, as well as the upcoming part 2, they're going to credit the statue to the Church of the Satanic Temple. And I think they're also, they probably also had to pay a bunch of money, because like there's a part that they can't talk about, and that usually is the money, you know?
Yeah,
so,
yeah, for sure.
They were able to come to a settlement, which is awesome, because like if that had jeopardized another season of the show, I feel like that would be a little stupid, you know?
Yeah, that would have been a bummer, because this is like obviously Netflix has had a bunch of great shows, but this is the one that I was really interested that came out this year. So I'm glad they figured something out, and thank you for being timely, Netflix people, so we can talk about it on the show this week.
Heck yeah.
One more thing about this episode before we move on to the finale. I liked the bit, and this is when Tom was talking about Nick is the Antichrist. He's always there. Fuck this guy. My favorite like witch bit they did in the whole show is how he drove the stake into the footprint to get them to stay in place. That was so cool. Like old magic, like something really simple. I thought that was really fucking cool. And like, it sounded painful. Like they were just screaming like they did that. But like, he always, not only is he always there, but he's always kind of like, oh, I'm going to help, but I'm going to help Sabrina do this by herself.
Yes. And I think that like, that's kind of like what I want for Sabrina. Like when she talks to her friends, like I want her to like, you know, help with agency rather than just doing like, and I feel like Nick Scratch, like what's weird is that Wardwell is kind of doing the same thing. She also is always there. She also is always trying to help Sabrina kind of get to a place where she's doing things that are going to make her like nice and ripe for the picking, you know, by the Dark Lord. Like I feel like both of them are kind of acting in that as these like kind of chaos agents for Sabrina a little bit. And like, you know, obviously we already know why Wardwell is behaving this way. Like she already has a purpose, but like we haven't really gotten to the core of why Nick Scratch is doing it, other than the fact that he has a crush on her, which like, fine, he likes her, but you know, is there a reason that they're like fated for one another? You know what I mean? Like they speak about Sabrina, you know, a little bit in the next episode, but also I think in the first episode when she, I'm sorry, in the second episode when during her dark baptism, they talk about her like, you know, because her father was such a great wizard, and that like she is that she's like, you know, witch royalty kind of, you know what I mean? Like they make it kind of seem like she's not just a regular witch and that she's kind of the Dark Lord's consort. So if that's the case, like I absolutely wouldn't be surprised if Nick Scratch ends up being that physical manifestation of her relationship with the Dark Lord, and maybe eventually she'll come to him, especially because now she's open because she and Harvey aren't together. You know, that door is now open.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's really interesting. Man, I want the next season because I feel like the Christmas special is going to be cool, but it's going to be like fluff.
Same. It's going to be filler. And I'm like, whatever. We get to, you know, we can dress up and talk about it and drink eggnog and have a lovely time. And then like, when does the good shit happen? Like, when are we back in action, you know?
It's probably not going to be until next Halloween, I would imagine. But I mean, it came out on my birthday this year. Maybe another birthday treat. Okay, let's talk about this last episode, and then we can talk about the season as a whole. This last episode was great. I was really into it.
Agree.
Episode 10, The Witching Hour. Like, how many shows have I, like, come on. But Roz and Susie confront Sabrina about being a witch, and she does tell them the truth. Even though at first she tries to bullshit them, but you can't bullshit a bullshitter. And, that's a role model's quote. What am I doing? Wardwell sacrifices a student at the hanging tree to conjure the Greendale 13, witches who were sacrificed by the Covenant, hung by mortals centuries earlier. And we have heard references from them before. And, of course, it does come back at the end of the episode that we saw these people earlier in the season.
Yes.
The 13 summoned the Red Angel of Death and spare Ambrose so that he can be the one to warn the Church of Night that they're coming. Father Blackwood orders all the witches to go to the academy to combine their powers for safety. To protect the mortals, the Spellmans conjure a tornado in a really badass, straight out of like the Craft scene. So that they'll go to the storm shelter so they can protect everybody in basically the same manner all together, so it's easier, like smaller area to protect. The Spellmans cast a protection spell on Baxter High, but Ambrose and Zelda are summoned to the academy, again by two people who we don't trust, by Father Blackwood and shitty boyfriend Luke, is it? Respectively.
Yeah.
Wardwell takes Sabrina to the woods to try to convince her to sign the Book of the Beast to gain power so that she's strong enough to defeat them, leaving poor Helga alone. But her cute Dr. Cerberus guy, which I'm all about that shit.
I love that he looks like Taika Waititi.
He does look like a little, like he could be Taika's brother.
Yeah, I love it.
Into it. Super, like, that's my ship of the show. But we're going to complain about that suspiciousness as well.
Yeah.
Sabrina finally does sign the Book of the Beast, and newly powered up, she unleashes hellfire on the hanging tree and the 13, burning their souls and banishing the Red Angel of Death. During the events, Lady Blackwood dies in childbirth, and Zelda lies to Father Blackwood, claiming the larger twin consumed the other, when in reality, the firstborn twin was a girl that they now have hidden at their house. Later, Wardwell reveals that she is Lilith, concubine to Satan, and her plan of becoming the Dark Lord's queen to Hawthorne before killing him, and her familiar, who can talk.
Out of control.
So where do we start with this?
I don't even know, dude. Like, I don't even know. This episode was like, it was insane. Maybe we should start with Balki Bartokomous / principal saying that he was engorged with excitement, which made me puke right up in my mouth.
And then sniffing her.
Listen.
He's like, ew, get out of here with that shit.
Like, this is all happening, and I've never been more surprised to see someone die. Like, I genuinely thought that like the Dark Lord was just gonna like come out of his mouth or something. You know what I mean? Like maybe he's in there. Like, I don't. That was terrible.
You've never been less engorged?
Oh my god. I was horrified. I like looked over at Jason and I went, hold on a second. What did he say? I had to rewind. I was like, no.
Subtitles.
That can't be it. I must have heard that wrong. No. But nope, didn't hear it wrong. Just disgusting. I'm like, who are they gonna get next season? Now that Balki is gone, like who are they gonna get next season to be?
Like, it's Luke Perry.
Oh my god. Luke Perry is Archie's dad on Riverdale, so he's taken. He can't do it. Maybe Jason Priestley instead. Be an extra gross.
I need to watch Riverdale just so I don't do things like this. I sound so uninformed.
Listen, if you can be okay with hating to love a show, I absolutely recommend watching Riverdale.
Wait.
Don't take yourself too seriously.
I know. Hi, Raul. She was asking for you earlier when she was talking about Lost. You know who they need to put in? We'll bring it full circle. Uncle Jesse.
Dude, I'm down. As a matter of fact, if we could just swap Father Blackwood out for Uncle Jesse, that would actually be a pretty alright show to me.
Yeah, but then like Father Blackwood would feel like a completely different character because he would be John Stamos and he would be very sexy.
Yeah, I'm into it. First crush.
The nails.
Yeah.
Even
the nails wouldn't bother me on John Stamos. I'd be able to overlook that.
Love it.
Yep.
Hey, Queen in the chat, and hey, Raul. Okay, let's see where we start. Sabrina being confronted about being a witch?
Yeah. Like, I'm surprised that it took this long, because I feel like there's a lot of weird shit that happens long before this with her friends, where her friends were like, you're kind of acting weird. And she's like, no, I'm fine. Look over there. Vanish. You know, she's kind of doing this weird shit for a while. So I wasn't surprised when they asked her. I was kind of like, all right, that's about right. You know, sure. I was surprised that she was surprised.
I think she just wasn't thinking about it. She just went through this, like, with Harvey. She's like, I just did this. Like, can I have a break, like, for a minute, you know? But, yeah, I think that this is a scene that needed to happen this season, for sure.
Yes.
And I'm okay with the way that it unfolded. I just think she's funny trying to, like, what are you guys talking about? Like, witches aren't real. It's like, bitch, we've seen all kinds of shit, though. Like, we already did the demon thing with them. Like, they know. Come on. Yeah,
man. Like, they had already gone through a lot together. I feel like, you know, it was definitely silly. But, like, I got all kinds of, like, hashtag girl power feels from this episode. You know, like, I love that, you know, her besties are able to side with her. For a minute there, it started looking a little dicey. Like, they stopped trusting her a little bit, which, like, honestly, I mean, she hasn't really done a whole lot to be trustworthy anyway, really, in this show. You know, like, I don't think anyone really has. She's not given anyone a reason to trust her. She's been pretty sneaky, and she's kind of done things that have been a little divisive with her friends. You know what I mean? So, like, she finally has shown herself to be flawed, right? And her friends, like, still are there for her.
Yeah.
And, like, that's something that I think is really admirable, especially because, like, she feels so alone within the witch world. Like, she has Prudence, and, you know, obviously she doesn't have the two other weird sisters because they're, like, all fucked up. But, like, she kind of has Prudence and she kind of has Nick, but, like, both of them kind of, like, Prudence doesn't really want anything from her. She just kind of doesn't see things the same way Sabrina does, you know, like, they don't really understand each other. And then she has Nick Scratch, who obviously is just, like, trying to, like, be her new boyfriend, you know, so she doesn't really have that support system. And especially in the face of, you know, losing Harvey, it's awesome to see that, like, she has these two people that, like, just love her unconditionally, even though she was pretty much a jerk.
Yeah, and I liked, again, the grandma with the assist. She's like, look at her. Like, you're intuitive. Like, look at this girl. You tell me how you feel about her. You'll know.
Yes. Yes, you'll absolutely be able to tell whether or not that she, you know, she's good or evil or whatever. Something that I didn't like about witchcraft, the way that they portrayed witchcraft in this episode, though, like, again, I feel like, and maybe there's a larger story here. Like, I know we talked a little bit last time about like the overall outcome of how witchcraft is being understood in this show, and like the role of witchcraft within, like, Sabrina's life, right? And how it kind of seems like everything is just the opposite of, like, Catholicism, and they can't kind of, like, figure out how they want to kind of talk about it. And, like, I feel like this episode also kind of was a little confusing for me there. Like, you know, it seems like being a witch is kind of just a bummer. You know what I mean? Like, it seems like it's just shitty all the time. And I feel like that can't be true. Like, it shouldn't be true. You know, there have to be pros. I mean, like, I have very religious friends that are very, you know, Christian or very Catholic. And, like, there's still pros that they see to the sacrifices that they make for their faith. So I feel like, you know, there should be things like that here, because it seems like it's always just a bummer. Like Ambrose says something to Sabrina about, you know, how like witches can't know true love or something like that, and how like that's why they, you know, have orgies and all that stuff. And I'm just like, yeah, but like what about a witch makes them unable to know true love? Number one, where does that come from? Are there other people who feel that way? Like, is it just a matter of, oh, well, we, you know, we stay alive very long, so, you know, we don't have time for relationships? Like I don't, there wasn't a lot of explanation there. And I feel like, you know, like if a witch can't know true love, right? If a witch can't experience true love, then like, how do they even understand it as a concept? Like, how is it even something that he envies of Sabrina? Like, why can't they have that? You know what I mean? Is there like some subplot where like witches have no hearts or something? Like, what is that? So I feel like there's like, they're not giving me reasons to believe that Sabrina should choose this dark life. You know what I mean? Other than like, oh, I need to save my family. And I feel like there needs to be more of a reason than that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it is a little nonsense, because it does like get to a point where you're like, okay, well, what is the benefit here? Like, I'm fully with it, but I guess like power, you know.
But like, that's what I'm saying though. Part of me wonders, like, is the witchcraft that they are practicing and the Satanism that they're practicing right now, especially when we know all this information about Sabrina's dad and how he wanted things to change, right? So like, if what they're practicing, the religion that they're in right now, right, with all of these like kind of outmoded standards and these like weird, creepy things that they do that like don't necessarily make a lot of sense, like maybe that's all part of it. You know what I mean? Maybe that's all part of like Father Blackwood kind of like revamping the faith to like suit his own needs and, you know, to be the way that he sees his religion rather than the way that it actually is. I mean, just like with, you know, Christian and Catholic faiths, like there are Christian and Catholic churches out there that, you know, preach, oh, love everybody. Everyone is, you know, God is love and God is everywhere. And then there's others that are like, yeah, except if you're gay, you know? So I recognize that there's going to be different kinds of messaging. So part of me wonders if like, that's where we're going with this, that like eventually like we do need to have a conversation about the positives and the pros and like the light side of the dark. You know what I mean? Because the Spellmans aren't particularly evil. So I kind of just wonder like, how long can we go on this journey with them, you know?
Yeah, I'm with it, because it's like it becomes at a certain point where you're like, oh, are they just doing this because like they've always done this? Because in a show that's trying to be so like forward thinking, that's a weird thing, like a weird theme to have. You know what I'm saying? Like the show's supposed to be really woke, but these chicks are just doing this because the family's always done this. But I do think that they're very heavily influenced by whoever is running the church, because it shows like that when the father was there, he changed so many things, and now this guy's coming back to try to make it like more traditional. So maybe when Edward was leading the Church of Night, it was a better place to be. Maybe this is just showing how oppressive Father Blackwood himself is.
Yeah, agree. I'm very interested to find out more. Like I feel like there are so many different like alleys of discovery in this show. You know what I mean? There's all kinds of things that we can dive into. Each character has like a pretty rich backstory. So I see, you know, several seasons of this to come. Kind of in contrast to Riverdale, right? Like Riverdale in its first season kind of lays out before you the town. You meet everybody in it. The only person you don't really meet is Veronica's father, whom you meet in season 2. But like everybody kind of knows everyone, and they talk very much at length about how and why. Everybody has, you know, like, you know exactly why Betty does what she does. You know exactly why Archie, you know, what his motivations are. You know exactly what Veronica's motivations are. Like they're very transparent. But I feel like on this show, a lot of loose ends at the end of the show. Like we get to episode 10 and it's like, okay, well, I know a little bit more than I did in episode 1, but I still have a whole host of questions. You know what I mean? And like, you know, Raul in the chat saying, I want to know more about Ambrose. And absolutely, I love Ambrose. And I want to know, you know, like we now know why he's under house arrest, right? That he tried to break into the Louvre for someone he loved and all this other stuff, someone he looked up to. But it's like, at the end of the day, how does that kind of factor into the Spellman family history, right? The Spellman family storyline, because it seems like all of them have had love lost, you know, and have made poor choices because of it, including Sabrina and her father. And like what role that's going to play like in his future, you know what I mean? Because now he has this like secret evil boyfriend.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
Ooh, I'm echoing really loud.
It's not that bad on my side.
Like when I talk,
I hear you
echoing through you. Do you have headphones?
I don't. Hold on a second. Let me see. Is that better?
Check. It's a little lower, but it's still pretty loud.
Hold on a second. Let me see what I can do.
Yeah, your camera kind of worse. Candace is going to try to figure that out for a second. I'm sure she can probably hear me, so I'm just going to talk, and then whenever she comes back in, she can address what I'm saying. Another thing that I really liked about this episode was how Wardwell, or Lilith, was narrating it. I thought that that was really interesting and fun, and because she's one of the more exciting characters on the show, it was really cool to kind of, I don't know, just like I delighted in her kind of telling us this story. Like, oh, she was literally like, oh, here's one last story about Sabrina. And it was like a bedtime story, but this evil person is telling you it. And you really get to see the full extent of her evil in this episode when she finally at the end kills her familiar, which I feel like is a crazy thing to do. No one's really done anything like that before, and I haven't talked about how I love the way when the familiars die, how it looks like the goblin creature and the animal. That character's design is freaking super badass. Obviously, we didn't get to see it here with her crow, but I'm a big fan of a lot of what they did with the familiars, and I do wonder if the crow could talk because he was a crow. Because ravens in real life can speak to you if you split their tongue. Arguably, they speak better than parrots do. You have to cut their tongue, though. So can he talk because he's a raven, or can he talk because he's a familiar? Let's see if Candace is working.
That is a good question. I'm not sure, man. Like, that's a really interesting question. I didn't even think about that. I would love to know more. And I don't know why she would have killed her familiar. Like, that was something that I just like didn't understand. I do love her narration throughout the episode, though. The whole time I'm just like, I'm listening to all of the things that she's saying, right? All of the facts that she's putting out there. Oh, and then this happened and this happened. And I'm like, who is she talking to? Like, who is the common denominator here? Because I feel like there are even moments in the story that she's telling where like the Dark Lord is at least relatively present. You know what I mean? Like, even if it's in like a more existential way. So I'm like, she can't be talking to the Dark Lord. Like, who is she talking to? And then at the end to like, I don't know, that reveal was pretty good. That reveal was pretty good. And like, I was very surprised that she killed her familiar. Like, I'm like dying to know more about that.
Yeah, and they waited the whole season to reveal fully that this character is Lilith. She's known as Madam Satan in the comic, I believe. And I guess in the comics, she's pretty established as that character from the get-go, is what I was being told. But here, they played it like it was a big reveal at the end of the season. What do you think about that choice?
So I did a little bit of research on this character, and I think I might have alluded to this in the last episode, but the story that she tells Sabrina in episode 6 about her reasons for being around her and that she made a promise to her dad and all that stuff, that actually comes from the comics too. So there's a character named, I think, Iola, because there's a couple of different versions of that character, like in a couple of different universes. So like she's in the Archie comics, and I think she has her own comic series that she's in, and then Pep Comics, which I think was like the original, like that before Archie became an offshoot of that and was its own thing. He used to make appearances in Pep as well. So there is a storyline, I think, in the original, some of the original like workings of this character, where her name is Iola, and she does fall in love with, you know, this like reverend of the church. And she does like really care for him, and like, you know, she like, I think she makes some big sacrifice for him and all this other stuff. So it's interesting that that's what she tells Sabrina as far as like who she is and why she's there before her great confession at the end. You know what I mean? So I do wonder, I don't know, I do wonder like what the significance of that might come back around to be.
Yeah, for sure. Let's look at the other important things we didn't get to talk about this episode. We can talk about... We should probably hit on both the witches all hiding together in the academy and the mortals all at Baxter High and the parallels between the scenes there. I think obviously it's working out a little better for the witches at the academy because there is a lot more strength there. It seems to be going a little more smoothly. And poor Helga is kind of left by herself by the end of this scene, just trying to like hold it together. And we get the really cute scene between her and Dr. Cerberus where she's like, oh, can you just, hold my hand? And he's like, oh, is it going to help? And she's like, couldn't hurt. I think it's really cute. Like, it's easy to forget that this woman's like a however many, like it's insinuated like at least 100 years old witch who's a virgin. Like they told us this information. That's canon. So it's like cute to see her have like the feels like a teenager would have the feels. Like maybe she's never even had her hand held with this sort of intention before.
It is. It's very charming. And it's like such a small request. It's like such a tiny ask, like, oh, just hold my hand. Like she's like such a simple witch throughout the show. You know what I mean? Like she's really never a complicated person. Like I feel like her intentions, she kind of wears her heart on her sleeve. She really isn't this witch that's like, she likes a bit of mischief, but she's not, like especially compared to Zelda, like she's really not this kind of like next level, sneaky. Like she kind of reminds me of Professor Sprout a little bit in Harry Potter, where she's just like this like sweet dumpling of a witch.
Very Hufflepuff.
Yes, absolutely. And then like at the end of at the end when she's like there with to me like her little kiss goodbye, it was so romantic. Like it really just like swept me off my feet a little bit. Like she was so like she looked so cute and like so like just taken with him. You know what I mean?
She did, and I was taken with him, and then he took 4 fucking steps away. He looked back. It was cute. Then ominous music comes in, and he has a weird fucking look. What's up with that shit?
I don't know, man. He's got glowing eyes and shit. I'm like, really? Really? This is what we're gonna do to her? Fucking Hilda is amazing. She's sweet and genuine and soft and precious. And like you're rolling up in here with these fucking glowing eyes. And I'm like, okay, so like, is this gonna be like a vampire storyline? Maybe he's a vampire. Werewolf, is he some kind of werewolf? Is he, like is he maybe, vying for the throne with, Father Blackwood? Like maybe he's, a warlock and we just don't know. But again, I mean, if he's a warlock, that's going to upset me because we had a conversation last time about how witches should be able to recognize one another and get vibes from each other. But if he's a werewolf, like that's just like, I can't even fathom how they're going to treat that. You know what I mean?
So Ashley does believe that he might be a werewolf, and she said like the eyes changed, it looked like werewolf eyes. Do you think if he is a werewolf and because he kissed her and she's a witch, then it did some sort of thing? Like because a lot of her spells have to do with like, bringing truth out of people or,
right.
Like she's a lot about like showing the true person or pulling the best out of people or the worst. Do you think that this somehow like affected him in an unexpected way when he kissed her?
That's a good question. I don't know. Part of me feels like that was a reveal that's supposed to obviously like make us wonder and make us question. But at the same time, like it doesn't feel like it's like I can't tell what his intentions are. Like I can't tell if like this is, like maybe his eyes changed because he's like so in love and like his real self like is starting to show, or if his eyes changed because like he's like playing her, you know what I mean? And he's like, haha, I got her. You know what I mean? Like it's such like the way that it's filmed in this little like sweet, kiss goodbye, like it's very misleading. But I mean, positive argument for the werewolf eyes comment from Ashley in the chat. Cerberus obviously is a 3-headed dog that guards hell. So like to me, that's also a double down on the idea that it might be, a werewolf thing. That's pretty cool. Like that's pretty cool. I'm very excited that they do open that door.
Could a warlock put an anti-detection spell on themselves? I would imagine, but they haven't discussed that straight up on the show, so it's hard to say. Because we can only play by the rules that they've directly given us at this point, so it's hard to say.
Yeah.
But yeah, the Cerberus thing is something I certainly was thinking about too. I was just about to say that before that was thrown down, because this show is pretty clear with its hints like that. That's the type of thing that they would do.
Yes.
But what else? She signs the Book of the Beast. That's a big one.
She does. She does. And like the whole time she's doing it, I'm just like, I feel like this is a little cheap, Sabrina. You made such a stink. You stamped your little feet. and made sure you got your way, and yet here we are still with you signing this stupid book, and you were all upset with your dad because he put your name in there, and he shouldn't have, and like now you're doing it anyway. And I feel like the cons kind of outweighed the pros here, but you know, we're gonna do it.
Just to let you know, Tom was extra mad. He's like, really? Really? She's gonna sign the book?
Yeah. I feel like that should have been the end of part 2. Like, give me like more struggle. You know what I'm saying? Like, give me like really serious consequences. Like, give me like tell me more about like what could or could not happen. Because even now, like, there's a lot of time that spent, you know, obviously giving us more information about each character or whatever. And there, like I said, there are a lot of avenues that we're kind of going down story wise. But it's like, you know, don't just like, it shouldn't be this easy for her to just sign that away, because obviously there are going to be consequences for her actions, you know. And I hate that it, like, I mean, obviously it's this tragic cliffhanger kind of thing that shows do now, so that they make you want to watch next season, you know, and get you real excited, like wet your beak a little bit on this mythology. But like, man, really, really kills me. And I see here in the chat, Ashley saying she's still wondering about that goat baby. Me too, Ashley. Me too. I want to know all about the goat baby from I think episode 1 or episode 2 that she sees in her vision in the forest. I need to know if that's like Sabrina's half sister. Like, is there like a crazy, like scary, you know,
it's Nick Scratch,
goat demon? Do you think Nick Scratch is like her brother or something?
It could be. I don't know. But like,
up.
I'm trying to get down, so that's a little Game of Thrones.
Yeah, well, I mean, they're witches, so anything really goes.
See, I don't know.
Incest. Ambrose was inviting Sabrina into the orgy, even though that's his cousin. So I don't know. Who am I to judge?
You have a point. You do have a point.
Oh, I really liked that whispering goat. Did you see that whispering goat? Like, this goat is like whispering to her. I think in like a flashback. I think like I watched this episode like 2 or 3 nights ago, so like I'm having a hard time like remembering it. But I made a little note because it reminded me of The Witch. There are a lot of references, I feel, to that movie in this show, and like I couldn't be happier about it, because to me it's like definitely one of the best horror movies to come out, I think, in recent years. It wasn't super scary, but I did think it was very unique, and I really liked, like a lot of people complain about how art housey it was, but I liked that, you know, you get this very kind of naked glimpse into like what the temptation of the devil like really is, you know what I mean, in that movie. And like I felt like that was kind of like a nod in Sabrina as well to that same kind of folklore.
Well, first of all, Morgan's going to love you for that one. He loves that movie. He actually brings a little pop vinyl of Black Phillip around with him and takes pictures of it at places.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I liked that movie. I thought it was a little slow, but the ending was really cool.
Mm-hmm.
And I do see that here. I do see the influence here for sure. Even down to the aesthetic of the book and stuff reminds me of The Witch.
Yeah.
Lots of cool shit here. Lots of cool stuff I want to touch on too. I don't want to forget to talk about Harvey and Nick Scratch.
Let's do it.
So this shit was cute. It was cute to me. Like, he sends Nick over, and Nick's kind of just doing it like, I gotta help this girl. There's this dumb mortal that she loves, and she loves you, guy, just so you know. And Harvey's kind of like, friends, huh? So you guys are friends?
That's it?
What kind of friends are you guys, huh?
How long have you been friends? Nick Scratch is like, yo, you hit it and quit it. So I don't know, or even ask me questions right now.
Play.
That's it. That's it. And Harvey's like, single tear. I guess that's true.
And then he's like, oh no, single. I just thought it was really funny. And what about Susie's move with the name drop with Dorothea when the witch shows up at their door? Man, that was some heavy shit. Like, that was some seriously heavy shit. And like, I don't know how I feel about Dorothea. Like, still, I don't know if this is just like a vision that the Dark Lord is giving her. I know that like Dorothea seems to historically be a friend to witches, but at the same time, it's a little creepy that she was like, oh, are they still witches? When asking, you know, Susie about the Spellman family, I was like, why would she ask that question? Like, why would it matter to somebody who was a good friend to witches or whatever? You know what I mean? I get very bad vibes from Dorothea, and I hate that, because like I really want to be excited for Susie having this kind of new chapter of her life to explore with this, you know, with this really awesome role model. But like, we just don't know enough about Dorothea yet for me to feel comfortable, and like, shit is just weird, man.
Like, it's weird for me. I thought it was beautiful though, Nana Rose walking through the door. Like, she was so ready to go and she was at peace, and like that made me feel a lot better for like Roz's prognosis, you know?
Yeah, it cut to the door, and I was watching with Tom. It was my second time watching, and I was like, I am Moana, because it reminded me of like when the grandmother like turns into the stingray.
That's beautiful. Yes.
But, yeah, that was sad, but it was also like she did what she needed to do, and she obviously had a good life, and like she wasn't alone, which is like a huge one. She had the 2 girls with her.
Yeah.
It was right. Like, it was just right. And I think that move that Susie pulled was ballsy and dope. Like, she was like, listen, I am Moana from Motunui.
You aboard my boat.
But she was like, listen, I'm the blood of Dorothea. She helped you. You're going to remember that. These are my people. You're not going to hurt them. And yeah, like a lot of it more had to do with the timing, because now the Red Death or whatever is coming through. But it was cool. Like, I thought it was a cool scene, and like how bold of her, like this character that's had a struggle with being bold.
Agree. Like, I think it's no coincidence that she feels like most like true to who they are as a person when in the presence of Nana Rose and of Roz, you know? And like, as much as I like the trio of Roz, Sabrina, and Susie, I'm really interested in learning more about Susie and Roz's relationship. Like, I don't know if this is going to be something that like turns into something romantic, because maybe Roz will see, you know, true to like Susie's heart. I don't know if this is going to be something where it's like the 2 of them, you know, might get alienated by Sabrina's other life. You know what I mean? And there's going to have to be like a meeting of the minds for, you know, the mortal friends of Sabrina versus, you know, Prudence and like the weird sisters and her other family and friends within the Unseen Arts Academy. I don't know where they're going to take this. And like that was like definitely like a really high note to end on for me for those 2 characters.
For sure. Yeah, I think it is hard to speculate what they're going to do with the second season. Maybe we'll get some sort of guidance on the Christmas special, but it's really open at the moment. Yeah. They might not even know yet. Yeah. We do have to start to wrap things up here. It's been nearly 2 hours, which is amazing to talk about this show. But I think that we absolutely have to discuss the Hellfire scene.
Yeah, man. Like, I don't know. Like, I don't think that I was really expecting that. Like, I feel like it kind of took me by surprise.
Even though they foreshadowed it heavily.
Yeah, but like, still, I was just like, I don't know. I guess I just didn't think they were going to go there. Like, up through the very end of this show, like, I just keep getting surprised with like how committed they're going to be. And like, I mean, obviously, like, you know, like they say, you know, bullshit within like the first 20 minutes of the show. So obviously they're trying to, you know, tell us, you know, like hand over fist, like, hey, this is a Netflix show. This is like not, you know, necessarily for children. Yes, it's in the same universe, or, you know, an alternate universe perhaps as Archie, right? Although I think it might be the same universe. But like as Riverdale, sorry, not Archie, but like, I don't know, like they really push the envelope. And like, again, like you said, it's kind of like anyone's guess, like where we're going to go from now, you know, into the future, which is unusual. Like, I feel like a lot of shows really do try to double down on what could happen next. You know what I mean? Like the could be or the what ifs. But this show kind of just like lets your imagination run wild. And like the Hellfire was just, I don't know, man. Again, we see Sabrina kind of like juggling and wrestling with like righteousness versus like darkness, which like I think because she's a witch, those things kind of like flirt, you know, mm-hmm. They kind of go hand in hand. I don't know, really interesting stuff though. Very interesting.
Yeah, I think this is the strongest we've seen her, and it makes sense because she just signed the Book of the Beast. Also, side note, if I sign the Book of the Beast, can I have my hair on fleek forever?
Seriously, man.
It looks great. A new like grayish platinum, really cool. But I liked because, you know, I've had 2 more people compare her to me in the last 2 days. I've been getting it a lot recently. Oh, you look like her. You look like her. I'm like, okay. Yeah. This is when she reminded me the most of myself, when she was like, they were like, listen, you're not going to do this Hellfire shit. Like, only 3 witches. And she was like, well, it's about to be 4. And I was like, okay, that's me. I see it now.
I can't do it. I'm going to do it.
It's happening. And then she did it. She went there.
She did, man.
It was
Like,
cool.
that was pretty cool.
I
Yeah.
liked the blue fire because obviously when we saw the premonition, it was orange, and
Yeah.
that was cool because it didn't blow the secret, like the story.
So part of me wonders if there's a significance in that. Like I know that like sometimes in folklore, like blue fire is like cleansing fire rather than like burning fire. You know what I mean? Like more burning fire is kind of associated with like red and orange kind of fire. You know what I mean? So like I kind of wonder if that's kind of signifying like a change within her, that like rather than her fighting against the darkness, maybe she'll find a way to positively utilize it for herself. You know what I mean? Like it almost seems like she's trying to overcome kind of like the status quo, which I think, obviously is like a larger kind of narrative in this show. It's like a kind of the underlying plot point is like, where is this girl going to take, the status quo of like her faith and like of what's expected of her, and how is she going to do it differently?
Yeah, for sure. But now she has this terrible, it's a Chekhov's gun of when is she going to be called upon by Satan? At what point? Yep. Because she sold her soul. You know what I'm saying? So now it's kind of like
he has a blank check to her, basically. Satan has like a blank check and can come to her anytime. Now, like, is it going to be super sexy? Like Nick Scratch like comes to her like butt booty naked and is like, hey, I'm cashing my check. Or is it going to be like, so here's a small child. You have to murder it and drain it of all its blood. I'm cashing in my check. Like what, what's it going to be? Like how diabolical now are we going to get? And like, and to what end are people going to manipulate her? Because obviously we know that the Dark Lord is possibly speaking to Father Blackwood, possibly speaking to Madam Satan, possibly speaking to like, I guess Sabrina a little bit, like in a passive way, right? Having these like kind of micro conversations with her. Like you have all of these different versions of this dark spirit that's trying to speak to her and like help govern her. And then you have like this other role of like, this is who he was for your father, like outside of what she's supposed to expect. Like, this is what the Dark Lord was to your father. Like, this is how he felt about the Dark Lord. This is why he did all the things that he did. And these were his reasons, for being. So like, I kind of wonder, like, I don't know, like how is she going to then kind of understand this? You know what I mean? Because she has so many different points of view and frames of reference for this like one thing.
Yeah. Ashley asked, does Satan have unlimited checking?
Probably. Probably. I mean, once your name is in there, it's not like he's going to be like, oh, hey, can I borrow a cup of sugar? You give me 1 cup of sugar back. Like, I doubt he's working on, that kind of
like a fair
system.
Deal. No. Because, lots of power, big price tag.
That's right.
So I think that's all we're gonna end on this season discussing this, unless you had any final things you wanted to touch on.
I was going to ask you if you had any what ifs. I have a what if for the show. And I was just wondering if there, I mean, obviously we talked a little bit about, what we think next season will bring, but the what if that I have came from episode 7 of this season. So during Feast of Feasts, right, we learned that Prudence is Father Blackwood's actual child, right? And obviously that's something that I don't think was like that surprising to anybody, but like it's also now like written, in stone that like this is his child. So Lady Blackwood is concerned that Prudence now can lay claim to the throne of Night because she's Father Blackwood's progeny, right? So if that's the case, is this opening the door to Sabrina being able to make a play for the Church of Night if we find out that Father Blackwood was nefarious in how he got the throne in the first place? So if Father Blackwood killed Sabrina's parents, which I would argue right now, that's probably where they're going because he's fucking awful. And he's just like the fucking worst. And obviously like he'll stop at nothing to, advance his own agenda. So if we can prove that, like if it's proven that he took the throne, without proper, without doing it through proper channels, does that then mean that Sabrina can be the new head of the Church of Night?
I'm into it. I dig it. I mean, he has the Hail Satan, Hail Judas. That fucking Satan. But yeah, no, I think that's a fair question. I think maybe it could turn into like, it's not like they haven't set up some sort of rivalry between Prudence and Sabrina. Like that could be what happens, you know? Freaking Wardwell at any moment could come and murder this dude. And then now that's all set into motion, like power grab season 2. Like, it could be. That's really interesting.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited.
But we will be back for the Christmas special. After the Christmas special, shortly thereafter, we'll get together and we're going to do another one of these just for that episode. So obviously it won't be 2 hours long. But I think we should finish up tonight by, of course, I want you to have everybody know where they can find you and stuff. And I'm on Twitter at @KimberBatch_OSP. But I also want you to give them a description of this promo for Thanksgiving that you told me about. And I think that that's a good way to finish up tonight.
Okay, so you guys can find me on Twitter at @CandaceGirl. You can find me on Instagram at Candace_the_magnificent. And then on Facebook /CurvyGirl. Hopefully I will have some more content for you guys in 2019, in addition to this next show we're going to do about the Christmas special. But today, do yourselves a favor. Netflix released something to kind of like wet your beak now that Sabrina has mostly been watched by everyone in the world. It's a Thanksgiving promo. Take a look on YouTube. It's pretty hilarious. It's Nick Scratch, and he's in a modern kitchen, and he is making a Thanksgiving dinner. So the whole promo, it's like 2 or 3 minutes long, is just Nick Scratch mashing potatoes really sexy and manly while like gazing at you with his dreamy eyes, like directly into your television, just staring into your soul. Never leaves your gaze. Like just keeps looking at you the whole time, consistently the whole time, watching you. Very creepy. He's like mashing potatoes. Then he's got like the turkey out and he's like doing this like sexy rub down on the turkey. Then he like takes it out of the oven and he has like his little turkey baster and he like drips some of the juices like in his mouth and stuff. And it's like cascading like a little waterfall into his mouth. It's really ridiculous. You got to watch it. It's must see. It'll either turn you on or make you feel extremely uncomfortable, possibly both. Maybe you're into that. I don't know. But it's definitely can't miss.
Love it. That's so great. Ashley says that are the aunts going to pretend the Blackwood baby is Ambrose's to avoid suspicion? Here's my what if. What if she just told her that the other baby was born first? Nonsense, you silly bitch. Like, just tell him that the girl was born second. They're twins. There's no way he's gonna know this. Unless Prudence tells them, but Prudence kind of has to know that they stole the baby. She was there when the other one was born, so I'm assuming she did some sort of like mumbo jumbo on Prudence's brain so that because like she's not a trustworthy person.
No.
But yeah, why not just tell her that the girl was born second? But anyway, if you have any more questions about this show, feel free to tweet at either one of us or write a comment here, and we will try to respond to you. You definitely need to go check out the first video's comments, Candace, because Ashley left a massive comment with a bunch of questions, and we both need to answer those.
Awesome.
So yeah, we're going to come back and check the comments, and we'll be here soon. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. We love you all for stopping by on Thanksgiving and spending this time with us, especially Ashley, who was here practically the whole time. She was the third member of the show tonight for sure. And definitely check out our Christmas episode for this, and look for more content from Candace and myself in 2019 on the channel. We love you guys. Thank you so much, and bye.
Thanks, guys. Bye.